The first thing I noticed was the silence. Even the wind seemed afraid. The battlefield stretched out before us like a scar across the land, a wasteland of twisted metal, smoldering craters, and the remnants of ships that had once carried proud fleets. Smoke coiled into the sky like serpents, and somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of alien engines warned of reinforcements still on their way. And in the middle of it all, she lay. Blood soaked her armor, streaked across her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her body trembled, not with fear, but with something far more potent, a stubborn fire that refused to die. Her breathing was ragged, each inhale sounding like it might be her last. I crouched beside her, feeling the heat of her wounds against my gloved hands. Don't die," I whispered, my voice cracking despite myself. She didn't answer. Not immediately. Her dark eyes flickered toward mine, and even in her pain, there was a spark that made every soldier who saw her, the one still alive, at least, pause in awe. "You think this is the end?" she rasped, the edges of her lips curving into a faint, sardonic smile. I shook my head, trying to mask the fear clawing at my chest. But the truth was staring me in the face. She was bleeding. Her energy shields were failing, and yet there was something about her, a presence, that made even the hardened veterans of my unit hesitate. They fear me," she whispered, almost to herself. "Even now." I frowned. "Why?" Her smile deepened, grim and almost otherworldly. "Because I survive. Because I fight. Because I am all they can't kill." And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just a soldier. She wasn't just a hero. She was a weapon in the truest sense of the word, a force that bent reality, not through technology, but through sheer willpower. Entire armies had fallen to her before, not because of superior numbers or firepower, but because of the legend she carried with her. She could not be defeated. The beginning of the legend. It hadn't always been this way. Once, she had been like any of us, human, vulnerable, and desperately clinging to life amidst the chaos of the galactic wars. I remember the day she appeared on the front lines. Her ship had crash-landed on the desert planet of Caris 4, the aftermath of an ambush by the Solari Armada. We were tasked with recovering survivors, expecting maybe a handful of wounded. Instead, we found her alone, battered, and trapped beneath the twisted hull of her craft. Her suit's power core was failing, the circuits fried in the crash. Her comlink was shattered. And yet, even as we pried metal from her limbs, she had lifted her gaze and stared at the approaching Solari forces like a predator facing prey. "They'll regret this," she said, blood trickling from a split lip. Her voice was soft, almost melodic, but carrying an intensity that made every soldier in my squad instinctively back away, unsure whether to speak or to run. We had saved her that day, yes. But it wasn't until the first battle after her recovery that we realized what we were truly dealing with. The middle, fear made flesh. The Solari Armada had brought a fleet to Caris for the following month. Their numbers were overwhelming. Dozens of capital ships, thousands of ground troops, armored mechs that could crush a small city. And yet, when she led the counterattack, something incredible happened. She walked at the front of our line, limping slightly, her armor scorched and dented from previous skirmishes. Every laser volley seemed to bend around her. Every missile missed by inches, almost as if reality itself refused to let her die. The enemy faltered. Their commanders called out orders, but their voices carried no conviction. Soldiers panicked at the mere sight of her advancing, despite the fact that she was injured, bleeding, and visibly exhausted. It was then I understood. She was fear incarnate, but not the fear that stems from monsters or brute force. This was a fear that came from inevitability, the chilling knowledge that no matter how much you prepared, no matter how many ships you commanded, she would survive, she would endure, and she would make you pay. I watched as she reached the enemy's central command mech, a towering war machine bristling with weapons. With a speed that defied her apparent weakness, she scaled it, disabling its core circuits in moments and leaving its pilot paralyzed with terror. By the time the battle ended, the Solari Armada had retreated, leaving their wounded behind. Entire squads of soldiers whispered her name in fear and awe, rumors spreading faster than any broadcast signal. The girl who survived when all else fell, the weapon armies feared, the invincible soldier who bled but never surrendered. The turning point we had thought the battles were behind us, that perhaps the legend had reached its zenith. But the universe had other plans. A new faction emerged, far older and more ruthless than the Solari, the Umber Conclave. Their technology was unlike anything we'd ever seen. Stealth cruisers that phased in and out of reality, drones that could erase entire battalions in seconds, bioengineered assassins with a single mission: kill her. We tracked them to the ruins of Nyx Prime, a desolate moon where the Conclave had established their operations. By the time we arrived, she was already engaged in combat, outnumbered and critically wounded. Her left arm hung at an unnatural angle, her armor in tatters, her energy shield barely flickering. I approached, weapons raised, ready to protect her as best I could. "Step back," she ordered, her voice sharp despite the obvious pain. This is mine." I froze. Even the Conclave's soldiers seemed to hesitate, their bioarmor shimmering with uncertainty. And then I understood the legend had grown, not just among our allies, but across the galaxy. Every soldier who faced her, even the most ruthless of the Conclave, had learned the same lesson. She could not be broken. With one hand, she activated a dormant device I hadn't noticed, a relic of alien design, pulsing with raw energy. The ground shook beneath us as an invisible wave rippled outward, sending our enemies flying in every direction. The Conclave's strike force collapsed in chaos, their weapons firing wildly, their coordination shattered. And still, she struggled to rise. Blood poured from her wounds, her body screaming in protest. But she stood. Every inch of her screamed determination. Every ragged breath defied death itself. The climax: armies in fear, we were in the ruins, surrounded by enemies who had brought everything to bear. And yet, for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never truly believed in: hope. Not because she was strong, though she was, but because her very existence commanded respect, fear, and awe in equal measure. Entire armies paused at the sight of her, even as she limped toward them. She raised her hands, and the relic activated fully, casting brilliant beams of energy that danced like lightning across the battlefield. Mechs were ripped apart. Ships spiraled into the moon's surface. Soldiers fell to their knees, trembling, unable to comprehend how one human being could command such devastation. And then, with a final, resounding scream, she unleashed the full power of the device, sending a pulse so intense it reshaped the battlefield. The Conclave forces retreated, their confidence shattered, their myth of invincibility replaced with terror. She collapsed after the attack, utterly spent, her armor fused to her skin by the device's heat. I rushed to her side, catching her in my arms as she let out the faintest laugh, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and triumph. "They feared me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Even now, even when I was bleeding, helpless, they feared me." The end. Beyond fear, we survived Nyx Prime. The Conclave never fully recovered from that defeat, and the legend of the girl who bled but never fell spread across the galaxy. But for those of us who fought beside her, the lesson was clear. Fear was not weakness. Fear could be a weapon, a shield, and a declaration all at once. She never sought glory. She never wanted to be a legend. Yet by simply surviving, by simply refusing to bow to the universe's cruelty, she became more than human. She became a symbol, a living embodiment of resilience, courage, and inevitability. And I, who had witnessed it all, would never forget the sight of her, bloodied, broken, yet unbowed, as armies trembled before her. In the end, it was not the weapons she wielded or the relics she commanded that made her feared. It was her unyielding will, the fire that refused to die, the quiet promise that no matter how hopeless the fight, she would endure. Even bleeding, even helpless, she was unstoppable. The battlefield lay quiet, the smoke slowly drifting into the alien sky. I held her close, feeling the tremors of exhaustion ripple through her body. Her wounds were severe, every inch of her armor scorched and torn. She had bled enough to fill a river, yet she still lifted her head, her dark eyes shining like starlight. "They feared me," she whispered again, her voice fragile but triumphant. "Even when I was helpless, they feared me." I looked around at the carnage. The Conclave's forces were retreating, their disciplined formation shattered, leaving their war machines and weapons behind. The soldiers who survived glanced at her with something like reverence or terror. It was hard to tell the difference. "You didn't just survive," I said softly. "You won. Against impossible odds, you made them run." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Winning isn't enough," she murmured. "They must know that even if they return, nothing will stop me. Nothing." A sudden tremor shook the ground, and I realized the relic she had activated wasn't just a weapon. It had permanently altered the very landscape, rewriting the rules of engagement itself. The energy it released lingered in the atmosphere, humming with latent power. The soldiers, even my own, instinctively backed away. We had all witnessed something that transcended logic. I helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. Every step was agony, but she refused to let me carry her entirely. "I walk," she insisted, her voice steady, "even if it's just a step at a time." We made our way to the edge of the ruins. The alien sky stretched above us, the stars faint behind the lingering haze of battle. And then I realized what I had feared all along. Even in her weakened state, she radiated dominance. Entire fleets, entire armies, even emperors who controlled entire star systems would hesitate, knowing that one person, one human, could bring them to their knees. "Who are you?" I asked quietly, not needing the answer. Her gaze met mine, unwavering. "I am what they cannot kill," she said simply. "I am the echo of every soldier who refused to give up. I am the reckoning." In that moment, I understood. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a turning point, a living symbol that the universe could not contain. The legends would speak of her for centuries. Empires would crumble before her mere presence. And yet, for all the fear she inspired, she remained human, fragile, bleeding, exhausted, but unstoppable. We set up a temporary camp at the edge of the ruins. Medics arrived to stabilize her injuries, but she refused sedation, refusing to let her consciousness slip even for a moment. "I need to see them," she said, nodding toward the retreating enemies. "I need to make sure they remember who they faced." And they would. Every command post, every fleet, every soldier who had witnessed her wrath would carry the memory of this day. The day one human bled, one human suffered, and yet one human stood unbroken while armies fell in fear. Night fell, and the twin moons of Nyx Prime cast silver shadows over the scarred land. She sat quietly, her body finally resting, her eyes reflecting the stars above. I stayed beside her, knowing that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with threats we could scarcely imagine. And yet, as long as she lived, there was hope, fear wielded like a weapon, yes, but also a shield, a promise that no matter the darkness, someone would endure. Her hand brushed mine briefly, a small gesture of trust. "Remember this," she whispered. "Fear is not weakness. Fear is survival. Fear is power." And then, as the winds of the alien world shifted and the smoke settled, I realized something that would haunt me forever. The galaxy would never see another like her. She was bleeding, she was helpless, she was human, and yet she was unstoppable. Entire armies feared her, not because of weapons or armies of their own, but because she carried a truth they could not fight. Some humans, even at their weakest, can become legends. She looked at the horizon one last time, the faintest smile on her lips. I knew the universe had changed that day, not because empires fell, but because hope, courage, and an unbreakable will had been shown in its purest form. And in that silence, the galaxy understood. She had survived, she had fought, she had bled, and she would be feared for all time. The legend of the girl who could not die was no longer just a story. It was reality.